Hello everyone, semi-retired Bob here. I talk about the carnivore diet, all things related to the carnivore diet, and some miscellaneous odds and ends. If this is your first time here at the channel, welcome. I'm glad you're here. You may be wondering to yourself, what in the world am I watching? Well, you're watching me walk. I do try to come up with some interesting things to talk about from time to time, but primarily you're just watching me walk, and why that might be important to you, at least I know it is to me, is that a little over 8 months ago, I couldn't even stand up for more than a couple minutes, 2.5 minutes, without severe pain. Carnivore diet has changed all that for me. Now I'm out here walking every day, some days further than others, but always at least 4.5 to 5 miles, usually 6 or 7. My right shoulder, where I fell a couple of weeks ago, is finally getting well enough that I'm going to try and get my trekking poles out again this afternoon and give them a little test walk. I'm rubbing my head a little bit because the door out of my trailer is just a little bit low, and about once every 2 or 3 weeks I forget to duck far enough and bang my head on the door jamb, and I just did that as I was coming outside to walk. So we'll see, but I got a couple of topics I want to talk about today. Did anybody see that video last night? That interview, I don't even know if I want to call it an interview. I guess it was 2 nights ago now by the time you see this. But shall we just say there was a very young 19-year-old trying to challenge a professor with over 25 years experience in health and nutrition sciences. It didn't go well for the 19-year-old. Oh, and if this is not your first time here, welcome back. I'm also glad you guys are here. When I looked as I was walking outside to start this recording, we're 9 subscribers away. 9 away from 3,000. That's pretty awesome. It still makes me smile every time I look at that number, because I remember all those years I basically had 25 subscribers back when I was a travel and photography channel. Now, I still can't believe so many of you want to hear what an old retired truck driver has to say. But I'm glad you do. It means an awful lot to me that you spend 5, 10, 20, sometimes even 40 minutes of your day listening to what I have to say. The video that came out coming out today, which would have been yesterday's video from your perspective, a little on the longer side because I didn't get to get out and walk the day before. So I'm going to try to keep this one a little shorter. Like I said, I'm going to get my trekking poles out here after a bit and walk a few laps with those, but I'm probably not going to record that. But my main takeaway from the video I watched last night, which was 2 nights ago by your perspective, one of them looked like they were getting prompted with their answers, because there would always be a pause as the person looked off camera and then came back with an answer. But the main thing I want to talk about, and somebody said this in the comments, and if that person is watching, I'd like to give you full credit. I went back through the comments and couldn't find your name to mention you because I couldn't. There were so many comments during that video while it was going on. But I think the comment that struck the nail on the head is that watching that reminded the commenter that I want to try and get this right. That rather than dealing with facts, science and facts, it was the classic millennial, or whatever this new generation's being called, because he's not a millennial. Whatever the next generation is, I don't. But anyway, what their comment was boiled down to, my feelings are worth more than your scientific facts. And that's really what it was. Well, I feel like this is the correct way because it sort of makes sense. Except, your sort of makes sense is not supported by the science. By the time this video comes out, you will have seen that 2 days ago, which is actually today or yesterday. Yeah, this will come out tomorrow. So yesterday, which was actually today, the interview that I did with Everyday Carnivore came out. And someone didn't have a real good perspective on the time and the age that I was when the things that happened to me were happening to me, because he said, why on earth would anybody say that something causes gout when there's been no studies relative to cause and effect? And he went on like that in it was a paragraph or two question. And I did respond. And I said, everything you just said is true. However, you have to remember that back in the early 80s, we actually trusted what our doctor had to say. Most reasonable people did trust what their doctors had to say in the early 80s. And only since the internet and social media have the free exchange of thoughts and ideas changed how we think. Because you have to remember, I graduated from high school in 1981. I know this is hard for some of you younger kids to wrap your brains around. And when I say younger kids, I'm talking about those of you that are even just in your 40s. In 1981, there was one computer in my entire high school. And it belonged to the advanced math teacher. He had a TRS-80 Model 1 computer. And he brought it in on Fridays and started teaching a little basic programming to the advanced math class, because he was sure that this computer thing was going to catch on. And he was kind of right. But there was no internet that was available to all. In talking with a friend of mine who is, last I talked to him, he was the head of information technology for Ohio University in Athens, Ohio. And You know, back in that time period, early 80s, some of the first so-called internet was started. It was actually, at the time, I believe it was called BitNet. And that was just a setup that allowed papers and information to be exchanged between universities, so that if one university was doing some kind of a study, they could send their results every once in a while to another university that was working on the similar project, so they didn't have to wait for snail mail to run back and forth. And of course, at the time, regular mail was not called snail mail, because nobody had computers at the time. I know it's hard for some of you to understand and wrap your mind around. But the phone that I'm recording this video on has more memory, more storage capacity than the computer sciences building with 3 different mainframes at Ohio University had at the time. And now I'm carrying it around, making YouTube videos on it. So a lot's changed in the 40 years. But the other thing that I said to this commenter is I said, you know, back in the 80s, not only did we trust what our doctors said, but the established theory of what causes gout was very well known. And how you should treat it was very well known. And if you went to 10 different doctors in 1983 and asked for advice on how to deal with your gout, it's my belief that you would have gotten basically the same answer from all 10 of those doctors. So the times have changed. And while we know now that everything they thought about that was wrong, we may have even known it for 10 or 15 years now. But, you know, once I got, past the 10-year mark of having gout, which would have been, 1993, which is still before a lot of you were born, it was well established in my mind what I had, what would sort of help it, and that it was a progressive disease that was slowly going to ruin my health, and there's not much I can do about it other than follow the gout diet. And I haven't checked. I meant to do that. I'm going to do that here in a little bit, and I'll update you in the second section of the video. I'm going to go ahead and do an internet search for gout diet and just see what comes up. Because I suspect if you type gout diet into your favorite search engine, the top 2 or 3 answers, maybe even more, are going to come back with the exact same diet that I was told about back in 1983. Because we've talked about this many times, how slow health sciences are to catch up to the current times. So I found that interesting. But I really enjoyed that interview. I had, if you're in my Facebook group, you saw that one of my members that lives fairly close to where I spend the winter went out for her first hike with her son yesterday. Now it's been 2 days ago. And it was only 2 miles, but it was a start. And I suggested to her that we get together before I head north and plan some kind of a trail walk. And she responded that she would like that very much. And then somebody else popped in and said, why don't you go ahead and, instead of doing a meetup gathering, why don't you go ahead and plan a group gathering so we can all go on a group hike. And I thought about that for a little bit. And of course, hopefully, you couldn't tell it now because it's barely 50 degrees again here. Have I mentioned before in one of my videos that it's been really cold down here this year? But hopefully by about the second Saturday in March, it will have warmed up enough that I'm sort of targeting that. It'll be a little crowded with other people, but asking somebody to come in on a Tuesday or Wednesday afternoon, depending on how far they have to drive, doesn't seem feasible. So I think I have to look at all my other calendars and see what's going on. But I think I'm going to target the second Saturday in March. That we'll meet here at the church and then caravan over to the state park. And depending on who all is with us, probably just go from the visitor center out the old wagon path to the overlook and maybe down to the water's edge, depending on who's with us, and then back again. So that'd just be, just a little 2-mile hike or so. Nothing super serious, but have a chance to just spend some time together, talk about stuff. So let me know down in the comments what you think. You can Google search either Seven Springs, North Carolina, or Cliffs of the New State Park. Either of those will get you fairly close to where I am. And just let me know about how many of you might be interested in something like that. I know I would certainly be interested. It can't be much later than that because March the 24th, as I believe, is when the men's conference is, which is a Friday. And then I'm probably going to stay in town for that weekend. But then that Monday, which would be like March the 27th or so, I'm going to head out of here to stop in and visit Mom for a week and then head on home to Nebraska. If the weather warms up, if the groundhog is nice to us on February the 1st and the weather's going to warm up, I may not stay for the men's conference. Because I definitely want to be home in time to start cutting the grass myself and start saving myself an extra $250. Because with the current cost of fuel, it'll probably cost me somewhere between $300 $300 and $350 to get my truck and trailer back to the house in Omaha. So the sooner I can start saving money from lawn service, the better off I am. So let me know what you think about it. If you've seen that interview, let me know what you think about that. There was something else I wanted to talk about, and I cannot for the life of me remember what it is right now. I, of course, have, notes that are written down in the trailer. So I'm going to stop by the trailer and take a look at those. But it certainly is pretty out today. The wind has calmed down a lot for now. It's supposed to rain again on the overnight into tomorrow, so we'll see what tomorrow brings. Oh, I remember what I was going to talk about. Because I was just getting ready. Well, I went into Walmart and picked up some things today. So I was out of paper towels. Well, not out. I took the roll I keep in the trailer into the church because the one that I leave in the church got used up. But I've noticed something. I thought maybe it was just an anomaly that first day when I had the T-bone. But I had 2 big T-bones last night that weighed out pre-cooked, bone in, at about 2 pounds, which is normally plenty of food for me. But I got done with those and I was still hungry. I ended up not eating anything else because I didn't have anything else to eat really. But I was still kind of hungry. Don't get me wrong, T-bones are very good. But the roasts that I've been having and the burgers that I've been having that are 73.27 have a much higher fat content than the T-bones had. The T-bones had nice marbling in them and a nice little strip of fat around the edge, but not nearly what these chuck roasts I've been having would have in them. Which just sort of reinforces in my mind that it's the fat that is satiating. Makes me not hungry. So I went in and bought 4 roasts. And the other thing I picked up, because the price on them has not gone up yet, and they come with about a month-long expiration date, I went ahead and bought 6 of the 6-packs of pre-boiled and pre-peeled eggs. So I'll have a 6-pack of eggs with my 4 burgers, and I'm going to start having a 6-pack of eggs with the T-bones that are left. I don't think I'll need to add much to the roast because I got 4 roasts and they all look like they got nice big trails of fat in them, which is what I've been getting. And I haven't had any reaction to those eggs yet. That's why I ordered 6 of them, which is basically 3 dozen already boiled and already peeled. So all I have to do is open up the package, add salt, and eat them. So I'll keep you up to date on how that goes. But I found it interesting because the T-bones were amazingly good. I did them sort of like I do the roasts in the oven. I stuck them in the oven covered with aluminum foil Since they were thawed out, I left them in there for about a half hour. And then took the cover off, turned the broiler up to 500, and did them about 3 to 3.5 minutes aside under the broiler. And they were nice and dark and crispy all around the edges, but still had a nice, I won't say they were medium rare, but they were definitely medium in the middle. So I still had some good pinkness in the middle. I just found it interesting that even though it was 2 pounds of meat minus the bone, but I did not feel full from that like I do when having a slightly less than 2 pound roast. The only difference would be fat. And even after I cooked those burgers, I put a little pat of butter on top of each one, and it melts into them and adds even more fat that way. So that's my little N=1 experiment with playing around with fat. So yeah, I mean, the T-bones are delicious. And if they're still on sale for $6.99 a pound, when my freezer space goes down, I will buy some more. But I now know that I have to add a little something extra, even to 2 pounds of T-bone, to keep me from getting hungry. Because it's when we're hungry and we don't have anything carnivore to munch on that we can make really stupid decisions. I did not. But you know, there's a little mini mart just a little over a mile up the road. And they sell all kinds of bad things. You know, I could have told myself, well, I'm still a little hungry, I'm going to run up to the mini mart and buy a little beef jerky. Well, not all beef jerky is created equal. And even though I tell myself that, who knows, once I actually got the keys out, started up the truck, and went up there, what I would have actually ended up buying in my state of hunger. So I distracted myself with a pinch of salt and then watched that video that I don't even want to call it an interview, but because what it really was somebody talking about science and some young kid saying, yes, but the way I feel should matter too. Well, it doesn't, not really. And while we're on the subject, let's talk about raw meat for just a half second. Now, I'm not a scientist. I don't play one on TV. I don't proclaim to really know much about it. And I can understand where the young man is coming from, saying that, well, we know that at certain temperatures, these vitamins and minerals get depleted. And I can see that. That does make logic that red meat might or raw meat might actually be better than cooked meat. Except the science clearly shows that cooked meat has everything we need. So unless you really like raw meat, and there's nothing wrong with eating raw meat, if you really like it, go right ahead. Me personally, I have no idea if I would like raw meat or not, because eating raw meat for me, is like picking up a stick of butter and taking a bite. It's just not going to happen. It does not appeal to me at all. So while I can sort of see where the argument was coming from on that, the science clearly shows, I don't even want to say that, the thousands of N=1 personal experiments that are out there to look at clearly show that while the vitamin contents might be reduced from the raw state, there is plenty of what you need in the cooked meat. Otherwise, people like myself and Professor K and Kelly Hogan and Dr. Baker and Dr. Barry and Dr. Chafee, and the list goes on and on and on, at least one of them would have had problems by now. But they're not out there. So, you can make the argument that I feel like this is right, but what you feel doesn't really matter. It's not supported by the science. That's about all I'm going to say about that. You guys saw it. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. You know what I'm talking about. The younger kid, you can tell that the elder statesman, scientist, was getting extremely frustrated by the answers he was getting, because he started off very polite and ended up reverting to his swearing self later in the interview. I mean, it went on for a really long time. So just be aware there's some language in that if you decide to watch it. But yeah, I think I've covered everything I wanted to cover today. I'll have some more thoughts down at the end. But let's go ahead and cue the music. Okay, cut the music. Thank you. So here we are. Oop. Careful. Sorry guys, I just found a roofing nail in the parking lot. And this is about where I come in from. So I'm gonna make sure I get that out of here. That's the first one I've seen. Walk over here and set that on my step so I can then throw it away properly. Oh. But yeah, it's now I completely lost my train of thought there. Oh. Yeah, but we can now see by a couple of different examples that I've talked about today how our times have changed. And whether we're talking about health, nutrition, politics, morals, whatever you're trying to apply, you cannot apply today's standard to yesterday's circumstances. You just can't do it because times were different. Even just going back 40 years since I was in high school, or graduating from high school, graduated from college, or graduating from leaving the Army. The things have changed so much in the last 40 years that, you know, back in that day, nobody would have thought to question their doctor. Now they may have gone and gotten a second opinion, but I had gotten a second opinion because what the Army doctor told me on discharge and what the doctor I found after I got out of the Army told me matched up basically word for word. Nowadays, with the exchange of information and all the things we know that we didn't know then, that, you know, back then we wouldn't have even thought of questioning a doctor. Today, not only do we know that we should question our doctors, we know how to go about asking those questions and what questions to ask. That wasn't a common thought back in the early 80s. So, just because you know something is fact today doesn't mean it's okay. It was known as fact 20, 30, 40 years ago. Just like what I was told as fact in the 80s and everything that was going on in my life seemed to line up with what I was being told, I never thought to question what I was told back in the 80s. Now I kind of wish I had earlier, but that's not what happened. But that's what I've got for you today, folks. I hope you enjoyed this little short walk and talk. There may be some more in the building later on. I'm planning on doing some exercises. Just depends on how long this ended up being, whether or not I need to add another section at the end. If I don't see you again later in the video or in just a few seconds of this video, don't forget to get out there, be 1% better. Have a great day, everyone. I'll see you tomorrow. Well, I didn't get a whole lot else done today, but I did want to stop in and show you today's dinner. Look at that. Isn't that amazing? Here, let me give it a quick cut, see how it came out in the middle. There we go. That's the middle, the thickest part of it. It's a little bit more done than I like, but it's also not too bad. I tried to get some exercises in. I got the exercises in, but I forgot to hit the correct direction on my camera, so it recorded the room instead of me. So this is our little bonus for tonight. I hope everyone has a great day. Don't forget to get out there, be 1% better. Have a nice night, folks. I'll see you tomorrow.